Most guys go through life in a kind of thug chasing love, approval, and happiness from women, only to end up heartbroken, used, or stuck in situations they never wanted. But almost 200 years ago, the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer ripped the mask off this entire dynamic. He exposed the raw, often uncomfortable truth about female nature, truths that most men still refuse to accept. By the time you finish this, you'll see exactly where you've been misled and how to finally get back in control. So really pay attention. What you're about to hear is controversial, sure, but more importantly, it's the piece most men are missing. See, Schopenhauer wasn't a believer in fairy tales. He didn't think love was some magical soul connection or a divine meeting of destiny. No, he saw love as something far more primal, what he called a biological illusion. An instinctual mechanism created by nature with one goal: reproduction. Here's the uncomfortable truth: that magnetic feeling, that obsessive desire, that certainty you found the one? That's not your soul talking, it's your biology calculating. Your brain is doing the math. Is she fertile? Are her genes good? Will she raise strong children? And women are doing the same thing, just with different calculations. Their subconscious is asking, can this man protect me? Can he provide? Is he genetically strong? Schopenhauer once wrote, love is the ultimate goal of almost all human effort. It is more important than anything else in life. But don't misunderstand, he wasn't celebrating it. He meant it as a warning. Because that all-consuming feeling we call love, it's just a temporary chemical trick. And as soon as it's done serving its evolutionary purpose, it disappears. Think about it. How many guys have sacrificed everything for a woman only to be ghosted, cheated on, or walked out on like they never mattered? How many marriages end the moment that first spark fades away? That's not bad luck. That's nature doing what it's always done. The truth is, women don't choose partners based on fairness, loyalty, or religion. They follow an ancient instinct built into their biology to seek out the highest status male they can attract. Schopenhauer saw this pattern clearly. He believed women were rarely driven by reason. They're driven by emotion. And that emotion is tuned to detect strength, power, and superiority. Now, before you dismiss this as anti-woman, take a step back. This isn't hate. It's observation. Just look around. Go on a dating app. You'll see 80% of women chasing after the top 20% of men. Or look at divorce courts, where a man's loyalty is often rewarded with financial destruction. Look at history, things have gone to war for women who betrayed them. The biology hasn't changed. The outcomes haven't either. Most men still operate under the illusion that love is mutual. That if they're kind enough, loyal enough, or selfless enough, they'll win a woman's heart. But Schopenhauer cuts right through this myth. To be loved, he said, one must not be just, but clever. In other words, it's not about being good. It's about being strong mentally, socially, financially. Women are drawn to men who don't need them, who don't chase, who don't bend over backward trying to earn approval. That's why the nice guy so often finishes last. Not because he lacks value, but because he misunderstands the game. He believes love is earned through devotion. But women, by instinct, are attracted to men who don't need to prove anything. Ever notice how a woman seems head over heels during the chase, but then loses interest once you're fully committed? Schopenhauer called this the tragedy of possession. The thrill isn't in having, it's in winning. Once the conquest is complete, the biology shifts. The chemicals fade, and the game moves on. This is why men who put a woman at the center of their world often end up abandoned. They cling, they chase, they overinvest, and biology punishes them for it. But here's the important twist: this isn't women's fault. It's not even society's fault. It's nature. The smart man, the one who thrives, doesn't waste time blaming women. He learns the rules and starts playing smarter. Schopenhauer's goal wasn't to teach men to hate women. It was to teach them to see clearly, to realize that love isn't a fairy tale, it's a transaction, a negotiation. And if you enter that negotiation from a place of weakness, you're going to lose every time. And that's just the surface. Because what comes next? This is the part where most men start to get uncomfortable. This is the truth that explains why modern men are getting played in dating, in relationships, in marriage. And more importantly, how to flip the entire script. Schopenhauer saw what modern society still refuses to admit: the rules of attraction aren't thin. They're not logical. And they definitely aren't built in your favor. Modern culture shouts about equality, but biology doesn't. And the man who ignores that? He's already lost. Here's the brutal reality: women have the ultimate leverage in the sexual marketplace. Not because they're manipulative, but because nature made them the choosers. A woman's sexual value peaks fast right around her early 20s. She's got beauty, youth, and massive demand. A man's value, on the other hand, has to be built over time through experience, power, and status. Schopenhauer didn't sugarcoat it. He said women are naturally suited to care for children because they themselves are, in many ways, childish and short-sighted. He wasn't trying to insult them. He was pointing out a biological truth. A woman's value in the mating being is her youth and her looks, and she instinctively knows how to spend that value while it lasts. Just look around at today's world. The average man is caught in a trap. He's told to be emotionally vulnerable, but women still chase dominant, profited men. He's shamed for wanting to be masculine, while masculine men still dominate the dating scene. He works himself into the ground to provide, and what does he get? Courts that punish him in divorce. Paternity fraud. Child support systems that crush him. Schopenhauer warned us about this. He said women are like big children all their lives. Not because they're bad, but because that's what helped them survive evolution. And that childishness combined with the modern world's incentives has become a dangerous mix. Today's women haven't just embraced their biological power, they've turned it into a weapon. Social media made attention a currency. And most guys are working for free. They orbit. They simp. They compete for the tiniest scraps of validation from women who wouldn't even return a text. Why? Because they've been told a lie. That love is unconditional. That loyalty is earned through effort. That if you just show how much you care, she'll stick around. Schopenhauer saw through this long before Instagram ever existed. He believed women were biologically incapable of unconditional love. Not in a malicious way, but in a survival-driven way. Female love is conditional. It's tied to utility. A man isn't valued for who he is. He's valued for what he provides. And the second he stops being useful, the love vanishes. That might sound cold, but it's reality. Women are wired to look for the best mate they can get. And if that man falls off emotionally, financially, physically, she'll replace him. And guess what? Society will praise her for it. You go, girl. Know your worth. Schopenhauer broke it down even further. He said men fall into two categories, those who serve and those who are served. The beta male sacrifices everything to prove himself. The alpha male doesn't prove anything, he just is. One begs for attention. The other demands it. You see this play out every single day. The guy grinding overtime to try to win back his wife's respect. The guy who gets in shape, thinking it'll lead to love only to be used for sex and discarded. The guy who drops hundreds on gifts just to be boosted for someone more exciting. But here's the hard truth, these guys aren't victims. They're volunteers. Schopenhauer didn't just expose the trap, he revealed the escape. And that's what we're getting into next. Schopenhauer's first rule for survival? See the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. The men who thrive today aren't the ones holding onto some outdated ideal of love and romance. They're the ones who understand the game and play to win. Here's what most guys still don't get. The game is rigged, but only if you're playing by the wrong rules. Most men believe their biggest challenge is women. But the truth? Their real battle is with themselves. Schopenhauer uncovered something that modern psychology now backs up. Women don't compete like men. Men are direct, confrontational. We challenge each other, we posture, we fight. But women? Women play a different game, one that's far more subtle and far more effective. They don't come at you head on. They don't declare war. They influence. They steer. They manipulate reality. A man says what he wants. A woman makes you think it was your idea to give it to her. Schopenhauer nailed this long before terms like emotional intelligence or social calibration ever existed. He wrote that women lacking the same physical strength as men were naturally inclined toward a sedentary life focused on children and domestic roles. And because of that, they live more in the present moment than men do. But here's the kicker, living in the present makes them hyper-attuned to subtle changes. Micro-expressions, voice tone, body language, social hierarchy. While a man is having what he thinks is a normal conversation, a woman is conducting a full-blown psychological scan. And this is where most modern men are clueless. They think they're in control. They think they're leading the relationship. But from the first date to the final breakup, most women are steering the ship through subtle, consistent testing. Let's break down what those tests look like. The compliance test. She casually asks if you can change your plans to fit hers. If you cave instantly, she clocks you as low value. The fame test. She pushes you buttons emotionally to see if you break. If you do, you've lost fame. You've lost her respect. The investment test. Are you doing more chasing than she is? If so, you're now in the weaker position. Schopenhauer said women are instinctively clever with a deep-rooted talent for deception. Not in a malicious, James Bond villain kind of way, but in an evolutionary sense. They had to develop these instincts to survive and thrive in a world where men had all the overt power. So what did they do? They mastered covert power. In the prehistoric world, strength kept you alive. In the modern world, it's manipulation. And here's the trap that catches most men. They confuse a woman's attention for genuine interest. But Schopenhauer exposed this illusion. Women are most drawn to men who don't need them. When a man makes a woman the center of his universe, he stops being the kind of man she wants. His neediness kills attraction. This is why nice guys often find themselves alone or friend-zoned. It's not because kindness is bad. It's because desperation is repulsive. Want to know why relationships fall apart? Why passion fades? It's not always cheating or conflict. Often it's just this: a man loses himself in the woman. He beats up his mission. He makes her the prize. And once he does, she loses respect for him. Why? Because her biology is screaming, this man is no longer climbing. He's settled. He's no longer a leader, he's orbiting me. And that's a death sentence for desire. Every interaction between a man and a woman contains an invisible power dynamic. And most men walk into it completely blind. She cries. He panics and apologizes. She withdraws affection. He doubles down, trying harder. She flirts with another guy in front of him. He gets jealous and she knows she owns him. Schopenhauer called this the tyranny of the weak. It's the paradox where the person with the least overt power, the one who appears vulnerable, ends up having the most control. Because weakness, when weaponized, becomes manipulation. A man who doesn't see this becomes a slave. But a man who does, he becomes unstoppable. And that brings us to Schopenhauer's most liberating insight: the first step to freedom is seeing the chains. Once you understand that female nature isn't personal, it's biological, you stop reacting emotionally. You stop taking rejection or flakiness or testing as an attack. You see it as instinct playing out. You stop trying to earn loyalty and instead you start demanding it. Because here's the final layer of truth: the most dangerous lies aren't the ones women tell men. They're the lies men tell themselves. Lies like, if I'm just nice enough, she'll love me. If I provide enough, she won't leave. If I give up my dreams, she'll stay loyal. These are fantasies, and Schopenhauer tore them to pieces. He wasn't just exposing the truth about women. He was exposing the harsh, unfiltered reality of human nature. And once you strip away the illusions, what's left? Freedom. Schopenhauer believed that happiness, true happiness, doesn't come from external things. Not from women. Not from money. Not even from success. The happiness which we receive from ourselves, he said, is greater than that which we obtain from our surroundings. Translation: if you don't have a solid foundation within, no woman, no relationship, no amount of validation will ever fill the hole. The men who truly win in life, they're not the ones who conquer women. They're the ones who conquer themselves. They stop chasing. They stop orbiting. They stop volunteering to be someone else's emotional safety net. Instead, they build, they create, they lead. Think about history's greatest men, artists, generals, visionaries. They weren't obsessed with being liked. They weren't wasting hours trying to decipher texts or wondering why she didn't call back. They were too focused on building empires. And that's where Schopenhauer's wisdom becomes not just powerful, but revolutionary. He laid out the 3 pillars of unshakable masculinity. These are the foundations for any man who wants to rise above the noise and stop being a pawn in someone else's game. 1. Economic sovereignty. Money, Schopenhauer said, is happiness in abstract form. Not because it buys you things, but because it buys you freedom. When you control your finances, you control your time, your movement, your choices. No one dictates your worth. No one pulls your strings. 2. Philosophical depth. Most men today live in mental autopilot, reacting to media, culture, and propaganda without thinking. The strong man thinks for himself. He reads, debates, questions everything. He doesn't fall for cultural narratives that shame him for being masculine. He builds a worldview rooted in reality. 3. Physical mastery. The body isn't just about attraction, it's about willpower, discipline, control. When you master your physical thing, you reinforce mental strength. Weakness in the body often bleeds into weakness everywhere else. And here's Schopenhauer's final mental refrain: the emotional armor that separates the reactive from the indestructible. The safest way of not being very miserable is not to expect to be very happy. At first glance, that sounds depressing, but it's not. It's a shield. When you stop expecting the world to be fair, when you stop expecting people to meet your emotional needs, when you stop needing women to validate you, you suddenly become immune. Ironically, that's when everything starts to work in your favor. Because the man who no longer chases validation starts attracting it naturally. He's no longer desperate. He's no longer performing. He's become the prize. And women, they chase the prize. What we're dealing with here isn't just a gender issue. It's evolutionary programming playing out in real time. It's biology dressed up in modern clothing. And until you wake up to it, you'll be stuck repeating the same mistakes over and over. But once you wake up, that's when the real transformation begins. The moment you stop chasing illusions and start building reality is the moment everything changes. See, the battle between men and women, it's not personal. It's not some social war. It's biological theater. It's instincts running on ancient software, playing out the same drama in different costumes century after century. And the man who finally sees that stops blaming and starts evolving. He doesn't resent female nature. He adapts to it. He doesn't get bitter. He gets better. Because while most guys are stuck arguing about fairness or crying over what they deserve, the man who's really awake is out there winning. Winning not because he manipulated anyone, not because he became someone else, but because he stopped volunteering for roles that only ever brought him pain. This is where Schopenhauer's most important truth comes in. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. That's it. That's the real trap. Most men spend their entire lives trying to mold themselves into something the world or women will like. They give up their edge. They give up their ambition. They give up their truth. And what do they get in return? Rejection, resentment, regret. Because deep down, no one respects a man who betrays himself. Let's bring it full circle. The so-called red pill everyone talks about, it's not about hating women. It's not about revenge. It's not about domination. That's a surface-level interpretation. The red pill is about something way deeper. It's about truth. Loving truth enough to let go of illusions. And rebuilding your life based on what is, not what you wish was true. That's where your real life begins. Not in the chase. Not in the validation. But in the reconstruction of a man who stands on his own 2 feet, unshaken whether he's adored or ignored. Because he's the ultimate paradox. The less you need women, the more they're drawn to you. The more purpose-driven you are, the more magnetic you become. The man who puts women at the center of his world is always off balance. But the man who builds a world so powerful, so alive, so purposeful that others want to be part of it, that man doesn't chase. He chooses. And that's what Schopenhauer was really getting at. All of this philosophy, this truth, this so-called dark understanding of female nature, it's not about turning you into some bitter, isolated robot. It's about liberation. Freedom from the lies. Freedom from the self-imposed prison of romantic idealism. Freedom from living life on someone else's terms. The final shift, the one most men never make, is this. Stop trying to change the rules. Learn them. Then play a better game. Not the game of simping. Not the game of pretending to be someone you're not. Not even the game of manipulation. Play the game of mastery. Master yourself. Your emotions. Your finances. Your time. Your direction. Master your mission. Because here's the raw truth, women don't want to be your purpose. They want to follow a man who already has won. And when you have that, you stop feeling loss. You stop feeling rejection. You stop feeling being alone. Because now you're building something bigger than him. Bigger than any single relationship. You become untouchable. And ironically, that's when the options come flooding in. When you're no longer thirsty, the world gives you water. When you're no longer begging, the world gives you loyalty. Not because you asked, but because you earned it. So if you take one thing from Schopenhauer's philosophy, let it be this. The man who controls himself cannot be controlled by anyone else. And that's the real secret. The dark truth most men will never hear and even fewer will accept. It's not about changing women. It's not about making them more loyal, more loving, or more logical. It's about accepting that they are what they are and becoming the man who doesn't need them to be anything else. The man who inspires loyalty without asking. The man who walks away from disrespect without flinching. The man who lives on purpose with purpose and never apologizes for it. That's the man the world can't ignore. That's the man women can't resist. And that's the man Schopenhauer was pointing toward, not with bitterness, but with brutal clarity. So, you've heard the truth. Now the question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to keep playing the same game, expecting different results? Or are you ready to rewrite your story? Because the moment you stop searching for external permission and start living by your own rules is the moment you stop being just a man and start becoming a force. Welcome to your new life,